Good morning. It is the third day of February, Wednesday, and we're going to again record some more on Proverbs. We're in the 30th chapter. There's only 31 chapters, so we're nearing the end. So we're going to start in Proverbs today in chapter 30 at verse 24. Read a few verses and then a few more verses, and then we'll talk about them. So let's start at verse 24. Four things on earth are small, yet they are extremely wise. Ants are creatures of little strength, yet they store up their food in the summer. Conies are creatures of little power, yet they make their home in the crags. Locusts have no king, yet they advance together in ranks. A lizard can be caught with the hand, yet it is found in kings' palaces. And then the second half of this, there are three things that are stately in their stride, four that move with stately bearing. A lion mighty among beasts who retreats before nothing. A strutting rooster, a he-goat, and a king with his army around him. So let's go back to 24. Four things on earth are small, yet they are extremely wise. Now, the things he's speaking about here are hardly things that you would have put as the wise ant or the wise locust or the wise lizard or the wise rabbit. Probably not what you would have said, right? But here, what the writer Edgar is saying is that these things show wisdom because they move with the plan of God. And God's plan for and design for them was wonderful. He designed them to do things which allow them to live and to live through times of crisis and through times of plenty. He made them in a way where their instinctual nature, even with their really tiny brains, their instinctual nature allows them not only to survive, but to thrive. And you might have ants that get into your house and you're wondering, how did they get here again? And you spray poison and you do all these other things, and yet they still seem to thrive. Well, here it says, first, the ants. They're not terribly large. Each one can only carry a small grain of food, and yet they store up food, enough food to get them through wintertime, to get them through any scarcity, enough food to grow them by vast leaps and bounds to huge numbers. So a little tiny strength, when used steadily according to the design of God, when you follow in the pattern he gives, even if you yourself don't make much money, they tell you to put your money aside a little bit every month, right? And put it in the bank where it compounds interest. Although you have to be careful about compounded interest with the low interest rates today, but that's a different matter. But to set aside some money so it slowly grows, and that if you do this in a steady way, even if you're small and you don't earn much and you don't have great wealth, then over the course of 20 years or 30 years, you'll have quite a bit of money saved away, enough to do many things which otherwise you would not be able to. We talk about it for college, but there are other things as well. Marriages, people used to set aside a hope chest for their daughter, and they would put things in there and they'd store them up through the course of their childhood. And when they reached adulthood, when they got married, they'd have this wonderful set of things that they could bring with them into the marriage to start their new life. And you get the idea. You could do the same with schooling, slowly taking schooling in the summer or night classes. And over the course of 5-10 years, you'll get a degree, which would allow you to go on and do different things. So the ant is smart because God set it up, designed it, so it would use the little it had to produce a great amount. Moving on to the coney. Conies are creatures of little power, yet they make their home in the place of big power, the crags, the mountains, these awesome and majestic places. They go to a place which shelters them. By hiding in the crags, they're protected. So they don't have much ability to protect themselves, but they can move to a place where there is a lot of power which will protect them from their enemies. And I know as a citizen, I personally do not have much self-defense capabilities. I'm large, but I'm not really a very vicious type of person. I used to wrestle, but that's not really preparation for violence. So my protection are these strong people about me, i.e. the United States and its military, the state of Missouri and its police force, the county in which I am and the sheriff, the police force here in Corder. I have all this protection about me because I'm living in a place where I am safe, where others have power. I am also safe. Okay? So the Coney, not a creature of great brains, dwells in a place of safety, of things of power which protect it. And we, of a lot more brain, choose to move to places where we're safer. Maybe move away from the big cities to the country where you have less prevalent violence. And you could think about these things. Okay? Locusts have no king. There's really no one in charge, but what do? They advance together in ranks. Why do labor unions have power? Why do groups of protesters have power? Well, it's because even though they have no ruler over them, when they work together, they become much, much more multiplied in their abilities and what they do. The Tea Party, when it rose up, it had no centralized authority, but it had a lot of ability to affect change. And the church, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, yes, we have a synodical president, but we're really congregational. But when we walk together, when we walk in ranks, we can affect change. We have a lot more power than we would if we were alone. A locust alone can attack you 1,000,000 times and it won't do any damage. 100,000 locusts will do great damage. Okay? Moving to 28, a lizard can be caught with the hand, yet it is found in a king's palace. This small and weak creature that has no power is able to climb up and get into places that people with much greater power can't. That most, even mighty warriors can't. And yet, because it is not really noticed, because it is small and doesn't cause perturbations of interest, doesn't cause people to see it and hear it necessarily, even if they sit and hear it, they ignore it. It can go where it wants to go. Sometimes we as people are the same way. In the game of chess, the king is limited in its motion. Because the king, everyone's eyes are on the king. That's the idea in the game. But the queen, kind of working behind the scene, is able to move everywhere. She's able to go to, because people aren't watching the queen because they don't think of her as the power, and yet she's able to go everywhere, and thus she gains a lot of power. The same goes with you and me. I, as a small town pastor, people hardly notice me, but I could be anywhere. And because I'm not really noticed, I could be where God wants me to be to affect the spreading of his word, to give the forgiveness of sins. Same goes with you. You may not be, from the world's perspective, all that important, but from God's perspective, he's going to put you right where he wants you. And you will have significance wherever you're at. I'm going to stop there and we'll start again with the next 4.